What is up, everybody? Thank you for listening to Targeting Winners, episode 92. I hope my best guess here.
I have one job, and I screw it up every week. I don't even know.
I have one job, and I get it. Well, thank you to listen. All right. Well, thanks for listening, guys. This is episode 92. You can find us. We're live right now on YouTube, so we're going to start doing these every week. And you got some feedback there, Dan. Yeah, make sure you got the volume turned down off of that. I hear my voice coming back.
Minus Dawn, yeah.
So, all right. Well, let's look back at the national championship review. It was about a week ago or so. Any final thoughts? Ohio State. I know, Pete, you're not happy, even though you're wearing Ohio State red. Looks like surprised you have that color in your wardrobe. I think it's just, the best team won. I mean, they were probably the best team all year. Michigan woke them up, and they had Jeremiah Smith, and Notre Dame didn't. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's pretty straightforward. I mean, they were a team on a mission, clearly, after that Michigan loss. They were just really good. I mean, listen, it looked for a while in that game that they were going to blow Notre Dame out of the game. At least hats off to Notre Dame for coming back, right? They played a good second half. They came back. They played well. But yeah, that OSU team was on a mission. So I don't think anybody was going to beat them, no matter who they played at this point. So not a great thing as a Wolverine to watch that, but I'm not surprised since we talked about it a year ago, and I was certainly concerned that could be the case. So I'm not shocked, but I am still happy with my Notre Dame bet. I thought they played well. They came back. So it was cool, but yeah, I'm not thrilled in general.
Darren, any thoughts on you being a Notre Dame guy?
I mean, obviously, you can see by my tag, I am quite sad as a Notre Dame supporter. But I got to give credit to Pete, because I had asked him before the game. I was like, we've had these bets for so long. I'm like, are you going to hedge? And he stuck to his Michigan guns. And the quote was something along the lines of, I refuse to bet on those savages. Something close to that. So I got to give credit to him for, not, for sticking to his guns and not supporting his arch rival in any way, shape, or form. But yeah, I mean, like Pete said, they did come back. I get sticking to man-to-man. They said all along that's what they were going to do. I didn't understand the lack of trying to put pressure on Will Howard. I saw very few blitzes or even attempts to try and rattle him. I mean, he completed his first 13 or 14 passes of the game. 10 minutes in, it looked great. I mean, if you were rooting for Notre Dame, I mean, you could not have asked for a better start. I mean, a near 10-minute drive, a couple of fourth down conversions, and it ends with a touchdown. And then next thing you know, Ohio State puts up 31 straight, and that was pretty much that. But, I still, Pete did kind of talk me into the Notre Dame ticket that I put down like last February. And it was minor consolation to have cashed the Ohio State ticket. I certainly would have preferred the other way around for financial and for fandom reasons, but a little something to dab my tears, I guess. But it wasn't completely ugly. So,
I don't remember seeing any turnovers by Notre Dame. I mean, I think it's just like I said. I still say Notre Dame had the better quarterback. Ohio State had the better everything else. And that's probably just not enough, especially in college, to overcome that much of a deficit in pretty much every other position. I mean, that's just an unbelievable team that Ohio State just had this year. Not much you can do about it. Entertaining game for sure. I mean, I don't remember being like bored or anything at any point in time. So, hats off to Ohio State, except for Pete. And hopefully that never happens again for Pete's sake. So let's also do some other housekeeping. We had a Bowl Mania challenge, and your favorite FSU hater, Scott, He
Oh,
won
man.
last year. He wins again this year. I have a bone to pick with the dude that came in second. Completely no shows. He didn't send in his pick, and he almost won. If Ohio State missed that field goal,
Actually, on the tiebreaker, he would have lost because by not making a pick.
Yeah.
Well, actually, no. You're right. If Notre Dame, well, he didn't make a pick, so he would have needed Scott to lose his pick outright. But yeah, that field goal with 25 seconds left or whatever it was got Scott into a first place tie. Like you said, Ethan, forgetting to pick all 46 games and then forget the last one kind of sucks. But technically, they both had 31 wins. The tiebreaker, Scott, I believe, had 62 for a total points scored. Ethan, technically, per ESPN rules, had 0. So with the total being 57, Scott goes back to back thanks to the tiebreaker. We won't get into who had 33 and, really dominated the pool from the start. But, let's just say he's in this room.
I think next year we should have, Darren put up all the money and then win Darren's money.
Well, you know what? If I was able to win some this year, I would have had you hold it and just be like, yeah, just put that up next year. But thanks to Pete for taking 200 from his OnlyFans to fund the contest. That was very nice of him. So that Tim and I didn't have to put in anything. We appreciate that. So Scott's happy with that. So congrats to you, man. Let's continue to hate FSU for another full season. I'm really lying where the money comes from. It's really Tim's OnlyFans account, but don't say. So yeah, another successful contest in the books. And yeah, if you guys just check us out, because most college football shows kind of go into hibernation now. That's something we'll do every year. So yeah, definitely check us out through the off season, the regular season. When bowl season rolls around, we'll have another contest up and running.
Well, you can still make bets on college football right now.
Thank God.
Thank God, right? So where do you want to go first? We have some national championship futures. We have some betting lines out for week 1. Heisman futures. What are you thinking? Where do you want to go?
You got the graphics, man. You put up whatever you like. All
right, well, let's go. How about national championship?
That says Heisman Trophy.
Well, no.
That's a sexy
There we
statement.
go. We're going to have a gag reel one of these days of all my screw-ups. Like grumpy old man at the end there, so. All right. Well, no surprise. Ohio State. What are they? Right at the top. Anything stick out? I mean, it's mostly I'm going to guess. Oh, Clemson, the only non-SEC Big Ten team. So yeah, plus 450. Everything is pretty much. That's not much of a surprise. Our boy up there at Penn State plus 900 might be kind of interesting. Mm-hmm. Anything stick out?
I mean, the likelihood of OSU repeating is minimal, right? I mean, that just doesn't happen very often. So, as good of a team as it is, I certainly wouldn't go that direction. Plus, if that does happen, I'll probably die. So that wouldn't be, that'd be bad. So we don't want that happening anyway. I do like Penn State. That's interesting. I mean, my early thoughts is Penn State looked good in this playoff, so I kind of like that. Clemson, I don't know. Tennessee, no. Maybe Texas. I don't know. It's interesting. I think I'm looking at the odds here in FanDuel or talking. You start to get below that, and it gets pretty deep pretty quick, right? I mean, Michigan's plus 3,000, Miami's plus 4,000, so it gets pretty deep pretty quick. So, I think a lot's going to change, and we're certainly going to talk about the portal and all that coming up here in a little bit. At least start that discussion. I mean, to me, it's a little early unless you really had a favorite in the house. Like last year, we felt pretty confident with OSU and even Notre Dame pretty early. I don't feel confident enough in anybody at this point to make a move, but it could be soon. So that's my thought. There's nobody that really stands out to me this year like they did last year, but it's early. So that's my 2 cents at the moment.
Darren, how about you?
Yeah, I agree with a lot of that. When I'm looking at these 10 teams and, in the last week or so, I've taken a look at maybe like the top 12 to 15 teams that are listed there. what am I missing with Alabama? Why should they even be considered to have a decent shot at this? Now, I mean, Tim, when we started this, like our very first show, like we broke down like the top 4 betting favorites, and when we got to Michigan, they were the 4th betting favorite at 10-1. We fired, and the one reason that we didn't like, I believe it was Georgia, Ohio State, and Alabama, is they were all breaking in new quarterbacks. Michigan still had McCarthy. He had experience. He had experience in the playoffs. Back then, it was only 4 teams, through 2 pick sixes, I believe it was, against TCU. But the thing is, he had that experience under that bright light of the playoff. You just look at this team, or this list, I'm sorry, going down the list. Ohio State, new quarterback, along with countless other losses. Remember, these guys all came back, for their last year to beat Michigan, which didn't work out. I mean, nice consolation prize winning the whole thing. But, Judkins entered the draft. Henderson's gone. Sawyer's gone. Tuiamaloa is gone. Denzel Burke is gone. Their defensive coordinator just left today to go take the job at Penn State. Will Howard's gone. There's just so many losses there. And I don't know, maybe it's because we all grew up near Saratoga and we try and fade the favorite every chance we get, like we do in a horse race. But, I would just not take Ohio State at that price due to all their losses. And again, Texas, it's Arch Manning. He's technically the new quarterback, but I mean, he's had some experience playing. He's probably a step up from Ewers, I think, just because he can run. But, Georgia, new quarterback. Oregon, new quarterback. Notre Dame, new quarterback. Alabama, new quarterback. You get down to those bottom 3 teams that are there. They all have returning quarterbacks. So, I mean, I would kind of start looking, maybe Penn State. Knock on Penn State. They're losing their best offensive player in Warren, their best defensive player in Carter. And we know James Franklin can't win the big one yet. Well, last I checked, the national championship was a pretty big one. So, 900, like Pete said, is a nice number. But I just can't, I would start with Clemson, and I kind of like Clemson. I actually have them written down as a potential play. Haven't fired yet because I don't know who the hell is going to run the ball for them. I mean, they lost Shipley the year before. They lose Maffa. Haynes tore his ACL. You don't know if he's going to be healthy for the season. But I think he's more productive than Aller at this point. And looking at those 10 teams, I think they've got the best quarterback. Nico probably step up. Nussmeier's pretty good too, but I think 1,800 is a little too short for me to take LSU. But my breakdown starts and ends with Clemson. If I can find something that tells me they're going to have a decent running game, I'll probably fire. I mean, their defense was trash last year, but they just brought Penn State's defensive coordinator over. So there's granted they got Ohio State's defensive coordinator now, but Clemson's defense should be a lot better. That's where I'm starting my handicapping, but a lot of those other teams, with the quarterback being one of the big losses for a lot of those squads there, it's right now, if you told me I had to make a bet today, it would be Clemson or nobody.
Well, you almost took the words all totally out of my mouth there. I was always look for the quarterback. It's the most important position. And both Tigers here, Louisiana State and Clemson, both have their quarterbacks coming back. I don't know about Klubnik. I mean, again, both of these coaches I consider Franklin adjacent. This is just not I know Dabo's got 2, but he had an all-world quarterback, regardless of what you think of Deshaun Watson now in light of recent events, or Trevor Lawrence. They were top-level, top-notch quarterbacks. I don't know if Klubnik's that good.
But if you look at what he did 2 years ago to what he did last year, I mean, that's an impressive leap. And I get it. The ACC isn't what it used to be, I guess. But, who else in that conference is going to challenge them? I mean, if you just look at it, maybe SMU right there if you want. But I mean, do you trust Miami? I mean, you're telling me Carson Beck is even equal to Cam Ward? And that defense has been ass for how many years now?
Well, come on, Darren. It's all about the U. The U is back.
I've heard that rumor, but
the U is back again for the 25th year in a row.
Unless the U stands for underachieving, I don't know what else to tell you. I mean, I don't know how Clemson doesn't at the very worst case scenario. They're participating in the game. SMU, maybe, Kevin Jennings is promising. They probably played equal to Penn State if you take away those 3 picks, 2 of which were returned for touchdowns. But they're losing a lot on both sides of the ball. Clemson, not so much. And their defense can't be any worse, by Clemson standards than it was last year. So, yeah, if anything, I'm taking Clemson.
Well, if anything, you got to figure they're probably they have to be the odds-on favorite for the ACC. And if they do improve, it's kind of like Washington a couple years ago. If the defense gets a little bit better, they should make some noise. They're going to get if as long as they don't screw anything up. I haven't seen their schedule. I think they play LSU this year, don't they?
That's the first game of the season. I believe it's a home game for Clemson, though.
Well, that's rare. Usually SEC does, those neutral site
I believe
games.
it's home. I can't say for sure. I thought I saw in FBS schedules that it was a home game for them. But
if they have an impressive showing there and manage to finish the year, somehow going into the playoffs with 1 loss or undefeated, they got the bye. They got one of the top 4.
And like I said, if you lose that game, it's not a conference loss. So, it doesn't hurt your ability to be in the conference championship. So, but a win, they can hang their hat on that for the rest of the season. So, and really, do we trust Brian Kelly? Do we trust that LSU defense? Not that we really trust Clemson's either at this point, but
No, I like Dabo better than Kelly anyway. I think he's he's incredibly likable guy. I just don't like the way he coaches. I don't know. It's one of those bubble screen,
To be fair, you hate everything that's not Florida State related. So,
well, and most things orange. So, but, goes on. It's an interesting thing. I don't know if you want to talk about the Heisman next, because a team that's not on here that might be an interesting long shot would be, let me see, is this the one? Let me see if I can get it right. Aha, the Heisman Trophy odds. There they are. So obviously you got LSU kid right there at the top. Then you got Arch Manning, Cade Klubnik. They're all right up there. Tennessee's quarterback. So I do have a unit play on this one. Pete, I'll have to send you the money. It's not a Hard Rock bet yet. Plus 4,000 all the way down at the bottom. Number 19 on the list, Marcel Reed at Texas A&M. I want to see what the odds are for them to win the championship, because that might be pretty juicy. And if he has a good year, the year that there's a big buzz about him, and A&M gets in there, you get the hot quarterback, that could be an interesting play. But I don't know if anything here on the Heisman list sticks out to you, Darren or Pete. It's a long.
I can't bet it anywhere unless I send you guys some money, because in New York, we're not allowed to bet on anything that's determined by voting. Sadly, I'd look at Aller.
Wow.
Penn State's schedule is not well. Penn State's schedule isn't terrible, and actually, along with Clemson winning it all, I see FanDuel's got plus 410 on Penn State to win the conference. I haven't fired that because I'm waiting to see what MGM and DraftKings come out with, but Penn State's a third betting choice between Ohio State and Oregon. And again, we talked about Ohio State missing a quarterback. Well, Oregon's losing Dylan Gabriel, Tez Johnson, and Birch, their best pass rushers. So, Oregon's defense was kind of asked to start with. And now Dante Moore, who's on that list, he's supposedly the new guy, highly recruited, but you trust him to win the Big Ten against some of those defenses he's going to be going against? I sure don't. I think Penn State can easily get into that game. They have Oregon at home. So whether you believe in that revenge thing from the Big Ten title game last year, I don't know. Maybe. But with the rosters being so different from year to year, half those people that lost last year probably aren't there. But, but their schedule's not terrible. Certainly 10-2 should be a no-brainer for them. I'd probably look at him.
Jalen Daniels on there at the bottom.
Jeremiah Smith, Julian saying, is going to be the guy throwing him the ball. So I'd have 2 Ohio State guys there in the top 10. If that takes 4 or 5 games for those 2 to click, and either one of them going to New York to watch somebody else get the trophy,
I haven't checked out the schedules of these teams, but DJ Lagway and the Jennings kid, they're interesting, I think.
Florida's is tough, I believe. I thought I saw somewhere Florida got another brutal schedule.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, in that conference, a lot of them are going to be a little harder than usual, but we'll have to see how the year plays out. But he seems to be pretty exciting. I'm kind of wish he transferred, but I don't know why he stayed. He should have went somewhere else and cashed in, I guess, but can't get him to leave Florida. So,
I mean, you can even look at Carson Beck and use the same argument I made for Cam Ward last year. If Miami's defensive issues aren't solved, he's going to have to put up stats to keep Miami relevant. So, I mean, he could certainly outstat a lot of those guys on the list. But then, every year, Mario Cristobal is going to Mario Cristobal. That happened last year in Syracuse. It's going to happen again.
Isn't it glorious? It's lovely.
I teared up a little, not going to lie.
He got $4 million, I think the story is.
It's an outrage.
I think he's making more. He's making more than Jaden Daniels and Caleb Williams and all those guys. It's like, he's
crazy. Pete, what do you think, man? I've been rambling for a while. What do you think on that board?
Yeah, it's. I mean, I agree on the Aller thing just because he's one of the last men standing there. I don't think he's that great of a quarterback, but I think the schedule plays out relatively favorable for him. He's going to put up some numbers, so I would not be shocked. I could ring the arch bell, I suppose, but it's his first year actually playing, so it's kind of hard to do that without seeing a little more on the field. I mean, it's certainly possible, but I wouldn't be shocked there. Let's see what happens. Jeremiah Smith would be interesting, but to your point, the quarterback situation changing, a lot of things changing there. That's going to hurt, I think. Yeah, Carson Beck is the one on here that I think with that, plus 2,000 is interesting. Can't say I'm going to play it at the moment, but I am somewhat intrigued by that. Out of more than anything else on here, especially with that number. I mean, plus 2,000 for Carson Beck. He's going to put up some points. He's going to put up some numbers, as you said. Yeah, so that could happen. I wouldn't be surprised there, but man, yeah, I mean, this is another spot where nobody's really sticking out to me again, right? It's not, one of these years where we have one or two people that are the clear front runners. I think there's a lot of people in the mix here, which is going to be interesting, I think. If I had gun in my head right now, if I had to pick somebody, I might take that Carson Beck number at plus 2,000. Don't hate that, but yeah, I don't love it either. I'm not kind of looking to jump on it yet, but that's something I'm going to think about over the next couple of weeks here and maybe do something with it. So thinking about that, thinking about the Drew Aller thing, although I probably would not pull the trigger on that. Honestly, I've never felt comfortable with Drew Aller to do much of anything with it. So we'll have to see. But I do think Penn State's going to be good this year. So that certainly could lead to obviously success for him. But yeah, at the moment it's a little open for me. But yeah, Carson Beck is a definite possibility here at plus 2,000.
Right. Well, like I said, I'm taking Marcel Reed. I just want to pull up A&M schedule. And this is one thing. What was his odds again? Plus 4,000. I mean, he's got a big game against Notre Dame week 3. He's got a tough schedule. He's got some home games. He's home against Florida, home against Mississippi State, whatever. Home against South Carolina.
That is not a tough game.
Well, no. But, hey, home against South Carolina, big game. He's got the showcase game at the end of the year at Texas. I think they're spread out enough where if he performs well, if they get a win at Notre Dame, that'll get the national attention. There was already a buzz building about him last year towards the end of the year. If he has the year that, we think he can have, or I think he can have anyway. I mean, at LSU, if he performs well there, he's going to get invited to New York. Mm-hmm. And if he gets invited to New York, I mean, he's one of the Final Four at plus 4,000. The site, they'll offer a buyout. I mean, I had the buyout at plus 4,000 for Colorado. I think the original one was like 18-1 before I got greedy and screwed it up. So, I mean, the bankroll doesn't care where the money comes from. That's what this show is about. It's about building a bankroll. So, I mean, if you had a guaranteed 16 or 18-1, wouldn't you take it? I mean, I would. I mean, unless if it's a clear, like there's no doubt he's going to win. Like if he has like 60 touchdown passes and 30 rushing touchdowns or something, and it's 6,000 yards passing, some outlandish season where it's obvious, and obviously you hold on to it. But if he's one of the Final Four, gets invited to New York or Chicago, are they going to move that around, or is it always going to be in New York? I know it's one of those.
I think it's always in New York, I believe.
Yeah, I know they move some of these shows around, but he's going to get invited to the final banquet, wherever that. I'm pretty sure it's in New York. Take the buyout. I don't know. Do you see any flaws there?
Well, first thing, you got to hope that whoever you bet it with offers a buyout. That's a brutal stretch from Florida to South Carolina. That 5-game stretch is wretched, especially with 3 of them on the road. Maybe see how he performs at Notre Dame. If he has kind of a crap game, maybe you get a little bit better number before he goes into Auburn. But damn, that from mid-October to mid-November, I don't know who doesn't like Texas A&M, but that 3-game road stretch there. I see it looks like they get a bye in there November 1st, but
yeah,
damn.
Well, they get a bye. They get the 2 warm-up games going into Notre Dame. They got Utah State and San Antonio. Auburn, Mississippi State, they should be able to handle. There should be a buzz building up by then. Florida at home. Arkansas, they were hit and miss all this year. Sometimes they played great. Other times they just looked like they couldn't do anything. Then they got the tough games. You got LSU. You got South Carolina. Missouri's, who knows what they're kind of like with Arkansas half the time. Then you got a warm-up game. Then going into the showcase, it could be, Heisman Trophy on the line, Arch Manning, Marcel Reed right there at the end on Rivalry Saturday there. So
and that's the other thing you talk about after the Mississippi State, there should be some buzz, but then he's going against Lagway, another potential Heisman candidate, Lenora Sellers, Garrett Nussmeier, and then like Pete said, Arch Manning towards the end there. That's there's 4 other guys that are going to be, potentially playing for that same seat in New York. But credit to you, man, for getting ready to fire on that. I just from Florida to South Carolina, damn, if he survives that, he deserves at least a trip to New York. that looks tough. That looks real tough.
Well, if you're going to be a Bear, be a Grizzly. So let's go. I'm throwing it out.
What the hell does that even mean?
What's that?
What the hell does that even mean?
Take the shot. Throw it. Plus 4,000. Let's go.
Yeah, you're the master of hitting plus 4,000s. I'm not going to not knocking your pick. I'm just saying if he gets through that stretch second half of the season, he deserves consideration. That's ugly.
All right. Well, so what's going to go on for the rest of the offseason here? We got some. We got to start doing our conference previews. We're going to have some bets coming up pretty soon. We probably look at some NIL news, do the top stories from last year. A lot of action on the NIL and the transfer portal. Where do you think we want to go next, guys, as far as the future shows?
Well, you know what? Let's discuss, when we're making these future bets. Yeah, last year we made them from a week after the season ended, right up through like during the season, Tim, when you placed a couple. Let's start with Pete because he's falling asleep over there. So Pete, you got, when you make a futures bet, this time of year, are you looking to fire? Are you looking to wait? Does it depend on the type of bet you're making? What kind of goes into your thought process?
Yeah, I think it really comes down to the type of bet I'm making, right? So we had that discussion on the Heisman here. All right, and from my perspective, I think it depends on the year. This year, I think it's so open that I don't really have something that's. If I did, like last year, we were pretty set on Ohio State and Notre Dame early, and we moved early, right? I will bet early and move early if I feel really comfortable with something. If there's a standout, whether it's a team or within a conference, perhaps, which I have not looked at yet. So that is someplace where I think maybe my first futures bets this year might be within the conferences. So I just looked at FanDuel a little bit ago. So the conference numbers are out there. I haven't looked yet, so I will look. But that's likely a place where I'll start because I tend to feel more comfortable rather than at the kind of rolled up national level to look at the conference level first. So generally for me, that's where I start with teams. I start looking at the conference level, getting a feel for like just diving into like Tim did here with A&M schedule, right? I need to kind of look at that level to get comfortable where I think a team is going to progress through their conference and how they'll put themselves in a position to do something beyond that to lead to, kind of national championship odds and all of that. So I'll probably do that in the next couple of weeks. So I would think, I'll probably have some bets ready to go in the next, let's say, month. I also really like this kind of, we're going to talk about the portal a little more, I think, but just letting the portal kind of work itself through a little bit and getting a better idea of who's going to be where is helpful. It's kind of hard. There's a lot of moving pieces around. I mean, I think we're starting to get a pretty decent feel for the major pieces and where they're going to go, but I don't think we're all the way there. So that, one or two things could truly change something dramatically, especially within a conference. I like to bet earlier if I can, but it really depends also how the odds are moving. So we'll have to see. But for me personally, when I'm looking at teams, I start at the conference level and work up, unless there's just a clear, 1-2 favorite type of thing where everybody seems to think there's a couple teams that are probably the leads. But I don't think we have that this year. I think it's pretty open. And because of that, I think the conference buildup is going to be important. So that's what I'm looking to do next, is start to build up from the conferences, start to look there and see how that translates into a larger picture. So I imagine in the next couple weeks, month or so, by the end of February, I'll start to get a little bit more comfortable with the conferences and have an idea of where that's going. With the Heisman thing, I don't tend to bet on that very early. It's just not my thing. It's just so much speculation, from my part at this point. I mean, you don't know how good the team's going to be. Injuries. There's just so many things that kind of come into a Heisman at this point, what I'd consider a guess, right? Because it's just really hard. There's so many variables around an individual player. Obviously, it's the Heisman, but if you were trying to pick an individual player to do anything, it's just really hard to do that. There's so many factors. So I think the team is easier than the player. So I don't tend to lean into individual player odds or things of that nature, including the Heisman, pretty much at all. I don't think I've ever bet a Heisman winner, to be honest. So it's just not one of those things I bet on. So that's kind of where my mind goes at this time of year, is letting the portal play a little bit, getting comfortable with the major conferences and see what comes out of that.
Tim, how about you?
Well, the schedule plays a big part. It played too much of a big part for my Big 12 bet this year with Colorado. But one thing I noticed that they did not have a very tough schedule this year. To be a little bit different from Pete, I like betting the Heisman early, just because I don't think these lines are going to go down. I don't think they're going to go up, rather. I don't think Marcel Reed's going to go up to plus 5,000 or whatever. I think if anything, once he starts playing, the numbers will come down. So I figured they'll be higher. For a future bet, I like to take the really long odds. And since it's going to, tie up money, from the bankroll for a long time. So like I said, this is going to take, it's only one unit, but it's going to take it up for at least, the next, 10, 11 months. So might as well take a long shot and then make my best scientific wild ass guess. And that's what I came up with, Marcel Reed. So that's pretty much how to look at the schedule, see if everything matches up. There's primetime games, because all the people who vote, they got to be able to see them. He's got the national game on Notre Dame. He's got the national game with Texas. I'm sure the Florida game and the South Carolina game will also be on national TV. It might be the SEC game of the week and all that stuff. So also, he does not play Georgia this year. They're probably close, if not the favorite, pretty close to being the favorite to win that conference, them or Texas. So, and they've got Texas. So that's pretty much what I do. For Heisman, I try to go early and get the biggest number. As far as the conferences, I just look at the schedules, and because you got to pray no one gets hurt. I mean, you pray, you don't want anyone to get hurt anyway. But that also plays a big factor. I don't know what you look at, Darren.
I'm with you on the long odds. I don't think I ever fired on a futures bet after the season got started. I like those higher numbers, mainly because the amount of money I'm putting on those bets is probably like a half unit at most. But when you bet early, you do, most of the time you do get better numbers. And that's kind of the payoff for keeping that money tied up longer. And like you said, with injuries, you can't handicap injuries. So I don't even worry about that. Perfect example. Tim, you're a big Kansas guy. You love your Jalen Daniels. 2 years ago, 3 years ago, dude couldn't even survive half a season. So if somebody went in and wanted to bet Kansas last year, they might have thought, well, Daniels can't stay healthy. I believe he played all 12 games. So, even a guy who's constantly injured can still pull a surprise season out of his ass and play the whole year. Now, granted, Kansas wasn't very good. I think a lot of that was the new OC. But if he stays healthy, I expect Kansas to be really good this year again. But, you can't handicap injuries, so I don't even try. And like I said, tying up the money is not a big concern to me because it's an incredibly minimal investment of what I'm putting in there, hoping to offset that with a larger number, with the intent to hedge later on. I think that I don't want to say it makes it a little less risky because there's 100 things that can go wrong. Minimal investment, higher number. I'll bet. And you talk about the ones that we've bet on, like when I did Ohio State, I literally bet that the night that Nick Saban retired. So to Pete's point, depending on the situation, if he doesn't retire, am I making that bet? And, when I look back on it, probably not. Because later that night, DraftKings and FanDuel had already dropped down to like 6-1. But MGM, for whatever reason, was still sticking at 8-1. And I fired because they had a much better number than the other two books. But at that time, if you remember, a lot of those guys hadn't determined whether they were coming back or not. Henderson didn't say he was coming back. Sawyer and a couple other guys on that defense hadn't decided that they were returning. I don't think Caleb Downs had transferred at that point. There was still a question of, was Will Howard even going to start? So, if MGM had adjusted that same night, I probably don't make that bet. So, the situation certainly plays a role in it as well. And as Pete had also mentioned, the rosters. They're certainly not set at this point in the season, but I think, and I'll get your guys' thoughts on this as well. I think we're kind of in agreement that winter window for 20 days in December, that's kind of where all the impact players, the guys that are really, really being sought after by other programs, they're usually in the portal and have committed to their new teams by the time that 20-day window ends, because those programs want to get these guys in, get them enrolled, and get them ready to go for spring practice, which in some cases starts in like a week for certain teams. So, I don't mind waiting. When that 10-day window in April rolls around, there's movement, but I think it's going to be really minimal as far as like how many impact players are going to go. If there's like a perceived quarterback battle, no head coach is going to tell these kids who's the starting quarterback before this last portal window opens. They're all going to wait till after they can't go anywhere. So, you can look at those rosters and feel pretty confident that like 90% of that, if not more, is still going to stay the same. So I'm not against that. Right now, the only players that can move are any graduate students that have, some eligibility remaining. There's a couple other exceptions which don't apply right now. Once your season ends, say that window ends 12/28. Okay, well, why can't all those other players leave that have bowl games in January? Well, they can. They get 5 days after their season ends to enter. And also any team who has a head coach that leaves, fired, resigned, retired, whatever, they have 30 days. We don't have that window's not open either, because I think the last guy that left was the Washington State guy. I think he left like December 18th, I thought I read, to take the Wake Forest job. So we haven't even had a coaching change since then. Unless you're a graduate student with eligibility left, those are the only people that can transfer. So again, I think these rosters are pretty much set, especially for the upper level programs. And Tim, you'd mentioned the schedule. The ACC is releasing theirs tonight, but even before that, you knew who all the opponents were. You just weren't sure of the dates and times on a lot of these guys. So I'm cool with making them earlier. And again, the minimal amount offsets an unexpected injury. Like Tim said, we don't want to see anybody get hurt. But, if I lose a half unit because some dude gets hurt, 3 games into the season or during a spring practice, I'm not going to be happy. I'm not going to be like, oh, yeah, that's great, because I'm not going to be happy about not being able to cash a ticket before the season even starts. But, I'm willing to risk that. And yeah, and I'm okay with that. So, but yeah, always before the season is when I fire on my futures.
One thing I forgot to mention, I guess I should take notes, but another player I was looking at for the Heisman, I could not download the schedule because it wasn't out yet, was the Arizona State kid, Levitt. There seemed to be a little groundswell. He's going to be a big number. So if he can, he had no following at all going into, it's definitely into the playoff. It wasn't until the end where he was getting some attention, a lot of scrambling, a lot of Manziel action there, if you will. But he'd be an interesting one to watch. If he gets up there, he might be up in the 5,000s, 6,000s. That might be enough for me to take a shot at, but I didn't even see him on there, and I pulled up the schedule, and I don't think there was anything on. There might have been one game against Arizona or whatever their last game of the year is.
There's one thing I learned last year. I'm not betting anything involving the Big 12 ever. I'm not betting anything big. I'm not betting the conference. I'm not betting them to win the playoff. I'm not betting. No, just avoid the Big 12 at all costs.
Well, we've made some interesting bets in the past couple of years. I mean, Oklahoma State, Colorado, Shedeur Sanders.
We all know how many years Oklahoma State took off my life 2 years ago. So, yeah, betting. They always say betting resolutions. Yeah, well, my first one: do not bet on any futures involving the Big 12 at all. So I'm sticking to that. Can't do it. Brutal.
All right, guys. Any final thoughts? Well, let's wrap this up.
Just gonna say, for your bet, he's plus 3,300 right now. So that's where he sits.
That's it.
That's it.
Oh,
I would not.
He's getting a little more love than you thought he was getting.
Not fire on that. I like Monster Reed's chances better than that.
Yeah, I do too. Because Scattaboo was like that entire team. Now he doesn't have him. I'm curious to see how they do without him.
All right. Well, we're going to wrap this up. Thank you for joining us. You can also find us on Spotify. We're releasing this later on Apple as well. And we had a couple people watching. Next time, leave a comment, dudes. So thank you for joining us. And we will see you next week. Have a good one.